Oh,
Hey, Possum. Sybill
hi.
Porter here with Samantha Johnson Barker. Hey, Samantha.
Hey.
We are here to talk about the intersectionality between the LGBT community and the disabled community. And so Samantha has a couple of disabilities that I'm aware of. I know she has epilepsy, and I don't know the name of her second disorder. If you want to tell us about that, Samantha.
Yeah, it's called arthrogryposis, and I was born with it. It forms in the womb, and it causes fixed joints and muscle atrophy.
I actually am very aware of that disease now that you've mentioned the name of it, because a dear friend of mine several years ago adopted a beautiful baby girl with
Oh,
our growth. I never can say it.
that's
Uh,
a
Tell me again. Tell me again.
arthrogryposis.
Arthrogryposis. And I'm not going to call out her name because she doesn't know I'm doing this.
Right.
So, but she has grown up. She's high school now. They didn't expect her to live past, childhood age, as far as I recall. I could be wrong about that. So, but that was my memory. And she's doing well. She's beautiful, and I just couldn't be more proud of her. So
Mhm.
that's awesome.
I'd love to meet her. There's not that many of us. It's very rare.
They live
That's
in Kentucky right now, but
oh,
I think, at some point, maybe she'll visit, or if you find yourself in Kentucky, I'll set you up. Now, tell us about how arthrogryposis was all right.
yes, yeah,
Excellent.
right.
How that affects your day-to-day life.
So I use a wheelchair. I can walk with long leg braces on and a walker, but I just can't go very far with it.
Okay.
So mostly I'm in the chair. I need help getting up out of bed, doing my day-to-day routine, eating, things like that.
Okay. Um, what would life be like for you if you weren't married?
Oh gosh.
Because I happened to have a meal with Samantha and her spouse Marlo, and I observed um, them feeding you,
Yes.
and so that begs my question. That's why I
Right.
asked the question.
So I do have support staff that helps me as
Okay,
well. They're paid to do that. And I have family, but we're not that close. So it really mostly is support staff and friends. I have a really good friend base.
that's awesome.
Yeah, they're always there when I need them. So
Great. Um, Anything else you want us to know about that specific disorder, disease?
I would really just say that we're just like everyone else. We just do things differently.
Sure.
We still go on and live everyday lives. We have families, we have spouses, and we can have children. So, those are kind of the odd questions that you get sometimes. So,
Exactly. And I know from my own experience, I always tell people, ask what you want to ask, because that's the only way we learn.
right,
As long as you're being respectful in how you ask and you have a purpose for asking the question.
right. I
Uh,
would much rather people ask than assume or be
exactly.
afraid to be around me. I've had some instances where parents don't want their kids around me, and they'll hurry them along and say, don't stare. And I understand they don't want their children to stare at someone with a disability. But when you yell at your child, you're giving them a bad experience with a person with a disability.
That's right. I hadn't even thought about that. That's exactly right. As opposed to maybe if they want to stare, asking you, do you mind talking to
Right.
my child for 5 minutes or something, and explaining.
Right. Most of us
Love
are
that.
very willing to do that. We would rather do that because we don't want children to be afraid of us. And
Right.
we know that if they're young enough, that we may be the first person that they've met with a disability. And if they have a positive experience with us, they're more likely to be open-minded when they go to school and meet a fellow student with the disability.
When I was in not junior high school, I believe it was, possibly middle school. We had a young boy who was paraplegic, so from the neck down,
Mhm.
and came in the wheelchair and had the sippy thing. And you know, I remember being so ignorant as a kid that, basically we did stare a lot at him, and we couldn't figure out what life would be like. You go between that feeling sorry for
Right.
him, of all the things he can't do, and not focusing on all the things he can do.
Right.
And all that he just wanted the same thing we all want, which is friendship,
Right.
and compassion and love. So,
I think the culture was very different too.
oh yeah,
Back in the day, children with disabilities were not even allowed to be in the same classroom as able-bodied children. So,
I don't know if it was because we were such a small town,
mhm,
that they just didn't have any other place to put him, so they stuck him in with the rest of us, which
right.
is fine. I mean, I think that probably was benefited all of us, rather than caging him away from us and letting us all grow up believing that all is well in the world and nobody has any kind of issues like this.
Right.
So that's great. And so I love that, like we said, the 5 minutes, maybe just interact instead of creating that. And it also puts you makes you feel uncomfortable, because the parent obviously feels the same way the kid does, and it's going, oh,
Right. I've
and that's
had
great of
really
you.
awful experiences with that in the store, and it becomes way more awkward than it has to be by the parents' reaction. I would say the parents are almost worse than the kids oftentimes.
I agree. Because the kids just have a curiosity, because they just look at you and go, and that's why they're staring. They're trying to figure out. I've never seen anybody like this before. What's going on here? And
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that. It's when
Right.
you're, like we were, folks, I told you we all had a meal out, and while we were sitting there, I was in femme garb, as was my friend Marlo,
Yes.
and Samantha was there, and this gentleman, I'm going to use that term
Mhm.
very loosely, was sitting in the restaurant across the way from us, and was staring at all of us. It was very much like he couldn't figure me out,
Right.
he couldn't figure Marlo out, and then he couldn't figure Samantha out. So he just stared at us the whole time. And I would look at him and just kind of smile and bat my eyelashes, because I didn't have my glasses on. I couldn't see him anywhere anyway. He was a blur, and I figured I'd just mess with him. Samantha, on the other hand, chose the dead on death stare
I can
at
never
him.
there if I get mad enough. If I feel like someone's being rude, they're gonna know.
Exactly. And I think directly after that, he left.
Yes.
Because I think you bored that into his head that we're not going to put up with your bullshit. And if you keep doing that, it's going to start getting louder.
Right. And then they realize, like, oh, I don't like being stared at. So
Why am I doing it?
no.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And nobody likes to be stared at. I mean, I like to be noticed. We all like to be noticed. We like people to think we're beautiful. But even, if you think I'm beautiful, don't just stare at me, for God's sake.
Right.
Tell me I'm beautiful, or come over and say hello. Do something. Don't just stare at me.
Right.
That's just rude and uncomfortable for all of us.
Definitely, especially when it's in a public place and there's other people around, and you get that sense in the air. It's like a feeling that you're being watched or stared at. And then it gets even more awkward because you wonder if other people are noticing as well.
Exactly. So, I think we've beaten that horse at this point.
Yeah.
So my next question, I'm gonna segue to another topic. How do you feel you are treated and accepted within the LGBT community?
I would say within the LGBTQ community that it's the most open compared to other communities.
That's good.
It's very friendly, it's very open, it's very inclusive. Um, That's all I can think of, really. It's
That's
much more
awesome.
inclusive than other communities, I'd say.
That's okay. That's good to hear. Where else have you
I mean that
experienced?
there are areas to improve on. There's always areas to improve on.
Exactly. So do you have you given this any thought? What areas do you think need to be improved on, and where can we get started?
I would say accessibility is very important, especially in events when there's event planning. A lot of times people with disabilities, if they're invited to an event and they don't know if it's accessible, they either don't have the ability to go check it out themselves in advance, or they're too nervous to bring the topic up and ask the host if it's accessible.
And that's a shame. And I know now that you've mentioned it, I noticed that most of the events I've been invited to didn't talk about accessibility. And so I think we need to make that we need to spread that message widely to event planners, LGBTQ or not, that if you want people to attend, you want to feel inclusive of all people, let us know how we can get in, or can we get in, or do we need to just say, okay, that's one of the things I can't do today.
Right. There's been a few times where I've been to things and it wasn't in the community. It was just other events that I've been to. And I didn't know in advance, but I still went and it wasn't accessible and it gets a little awkward. There's always kind people that offer to help.
Yeah,
It gets a little awkward and it's just nice to know in advance.
agreed. And you can make arrangements if you need that assistance.
Right.
I mean, if you want to go someplace by yourself and it's not accessible, what are you supposed to do? And so I think that's important. Anything else?
Maybe more awareness on the topic because the topic of disability is so wide. I mean,
Right.
it could vary between physical disabilities to mental illness to a whole host of other conditions in between that as well. It's a spectrum. It's kind of like an umbrella term. So what concerns are valid for me may not be the same concerns that someone else has.
Absolutely. We talked before we started recording, as we do on this program, the green room that doesn't exist. And we both are disabled people. I have bipolar disorder, and we've already talked about yours. So, but our disabilities look very different and are very different.
Right. And
And need different accommodations.
right. And some people have the invisible disabilities like the bipolar. And unfortunately, I think there's stigma that goes along with that because
Absolutely.
a lot of people, they don't believe that it's a disability just because they can't see it.
Exactly. Same thing with fibromyalgia or, diseases like that cause people lupus, any of those.
Autoimmune disorders are a big one. They're not always visible.
Exactly. We can talk about HIV. How many people have been walking around with HIV that didn't know it for years? Especially nowadays, because, the science has changed to make the disease different.
Right.
So yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot of stigma that can go along with it. I mean, hate crimes have been on the rise for years against people with disabilities.
Transgender people are targeted all the time, as you I'm sure know.
Yes, transgender people with disabilities are the most vulnerable.
Yeah, I can imagine.
People of color with disabilities are the most vulnerable category. And that's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. Whereas if we can just overlook what it is we hate about ourselves that causes us to have those reactions. I told a story a while back on Facebook where when I was just in DC and I was working, I thought I was, woke and alive and authentic and all that then, but there was a young man who presented as man, but he had the long fake nails like my one here. Mine are broken right now. They're very pretty, but they're different different lengths because I was told the acrylics couldn't break, and I've broken 5 out of 10. So they're about to come off, and I'm going to have them redone, but today wasn't the day. So I had a point there, Samantha. Where was I going?
Oh, the person that you saw with the nails.
Ah, thank you.
Yes.
I also have liver fog these days because of my liver failure last year. So my short-term memory, sometimes I have to have a refresher, a little bump.
I think it's probably my ADD though.
But this guy wore these nails, and I was just filled with rage and disgust. This man, I was fine with it in drag. I did it in drag. I didn't mind that. But a man, somebody presenting as a man, would have these nails just bug the shit out of me.
Right.
And now I realize it's because I really wanted to be able to wear those nails. And I did at the time too. I remember thinking that, but I remember thinking and go, but that looks so ridiculous on him. I'd never do it.
Right.
And now I'm doing it. So, and I'm happy that I am doing it. It was the very first thing I did when I became expressively non-binary, was get my nails done. And it just brought me such joy every time I looked down at them that it was worth every cent.
And it probably was that projection.
That's exactly right. It was projection of my emotions and my feelings toward myself that I was putting on him. And so what I was saying earlier is, what do you hate about yourself so much that you need to hate these other people because they represent that? And it's the same thing with homophobia. The majority, I think, of people, men in particular, who are homophobic, have that desire in there. I think that if you are attracted to men, you're attracted to men. It's not like it's going to be a surprise.
Right.
I've known I was attracted to men since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, before I even knew what the words meant. So absolutely born this way. It's who I am. It's ingrained in my genetic composure. You're not going to change it even if you pray. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen because God made me this way, and that's who I am.
Right. And I think a lot of people, because they can't accept their truth, they don't want to acknowledge it in someone else.
They hate it that somebody else is doing it and they can't, I think.
Right.
Yeah. And I would say, even for you, the more you're out and you're doing things and living your life instead of in a cubbyhole that they expect you to be in, they're forced to see you, and they're forced to acknowledge their internalized issues about disabilities,
Right. And I've even had that happen with friendships. I've had to learn that tough lesson over time. I had a best friend, and she was getting married, and we had always said that we were going to be each other's bridesmaids. And it was before I was getting married. So she was the first, but turned out she didn't want me to be in her wedding because she said I would be a distraction.
Oh my God.
Right. She didn't want a distraction on her big day.
What a horrible thing to say.
Yeah. And we're not friends anymore, obviously, but
Yeah.
Because we had been friends at second grade. So, it even happens in the people you would never expect.
I found that true when I got sick last October, who my real friends were.
Yep.
And a lot of the people that I thought were my ride or die disappeared faster than a trick the morning after. And you just kind of sit there and hope and pray they didn't steal your wallet on the way out,
That's true.
And then some folks who had just been basic acquaintances to me for years stepped up, and they were checking in on me and calling me, asking me if I needed anything, going to the grocery store, helping me move furniture when I needed to do that. And now they've absolutely proven, as Maya Angelou always said, when people show you who they are, believe them.
Right.
So now, those friends who weren't there for me are in still friends. I still love them.
Right.
I just now choose how much of myself I'm giving them.
Right.
Am I spending time with them? Am I worrying about calling them, checking in on them? If you can't care enough about me to check on me when you know that I just got home from almost dying, how good of friends are we? I mean, I'd be
Definitely.
devastated if I found out that you were in the hospital.
Oh, I'd
And
be devastated if I found out that you were in the hospital. I would.
exactly. And I'd be checking on you and figuring out, how can I help? What can I do? My friend the other night said she was quarantined for the night until she could get a COVID vaccination, and she didn't have any food, and
Oh my gosh.
asked me if I could go to the store. And I'm like, of course I can go to the store for you.
Yeah.
That's not hurting me in any way. I can wear my mask up to your house, get your card, you know, go to
And
the grocery store and
it
come
took
back.
you for a whirlwind when you realize the people that you thought you knew are
Yeah,
not
are not
the
them.
ones that you thought you knew. You thought that they would be there for you, and then
It's
suddenly
heartbreaking.
they're
It's
not. And
heartbreaking.
it
Yeah.
makes you question almost everything in life. It can really be depressing. I've had over 30 surgeries, and there's always been a few surgeries where I have lost friends afterwards because they never even checked in. And then later they'll contact once I'm better and say, "Oh, I just want you to know I was praying for you."
I've gotten that too. And I'm like, well, thank you. That was really sweet. You could have
Right.
also called me and said, how are you doing? And
Right,
just
because
been
it's
a
very
voice of
lonely.
support,
Yeah.
even just saying, do you want to talk?
Right.
And I'd have people say, well, I didn't want to bother you because I knew you were recovering. And we didn't know if you wanted to even talk about it. And I'm like, at that time I didn't, but you don't know that unless you ask.
Right. And I think that's kind of a cop out. I
Yes,
think they know deep down that they should have checked in. And so they're giving excuses.
it is. And I look back at times where I've done the same thing to other people, and I recognize that I made a mistake, and I've learned from it. So, hopefully if our relationship was meaningful to you and you're hearing this for the first time, maybe you need to do a better job of being a friend.
Right.
Because I didn't feel it.
And we can all learn
Yeah,
from experiences and our mistakes. No one's perfect.
right.
I've had a few friends that apologized and even admitted. I had one friend that said um, her dad had been through some really bad health problems in previous years. And it was kind of triggering for her for me to be in the hospital.
And
And
I think that happened.
I had no idea. I thought that she was just ignoring me and not wanting to be there for me. But it turned out it was just triggering for her because her dad had been in the hospital for
But
so long.
until she tells you that, you don't know. All you're left is feeling abandoned.
Right.
And that's the thing. I just laid here in misery, unable to walk, unable to go anywhere with my mom. And I love my mom.
Mhm.
But, I wanted to at least have that compassion to know that my friends were thinking about me. Colleagues that I've worked with, some of the other realtors in town were some of the biggest people who stepped up to
I
help
know,
me.
it was surprising for you. You probably expected your best friends to show
Exactly.
up.
And realtors from other companies that I didn't even work with. My particular company didn't do much of anything, and I'm going to say that out loud, even though I don't want to denigrate a company, and I'm not mentioning the company, but I was disappointed in that, and it hurt my feelings. It hurt me deeply.
Right. And it's good to get it out in the air because maybe someone will see that and realize, oh, we should do a better job in the future. It's not always about calling people out, it's about making a difference for the future.
Right.
You don't want someone to feel as alone as you did.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Near-death experiences is traumatic, and recovering from it is traumatic and hard. It took me 9 months really to be able to get back out to where I could work. And so, I finally made my first commission check after not having made really any money in a year. That's a hard way to live.
That is.
And having made too much money in 2019 to qualify for any assistance.
Oh, I know what you mean.
So, I went through all of my savings pretty fast, and I'm steadily working on my mother's retirement account, which is
Right.
not good. So I'm back working, and I need to make money, and I need to pay her back, and I need to, make money for myself to live. So I'm glad to finally be there.
Reward that. Reward your efforts instead of taking away your benefits whenever
Exactly.
you try.
Exactly.
The system is very broken.
And toward that end, I just, I'll throw in a little plug for my own company. Just started Port City Dwellings here in Wilmington. It's my own brokerage. I'm the only broker at the moment, but if you like what I'm doing and you support my mission and you're a realtor and you want to talk to me, give a buzz. We'll see what we can work out. But I'm excited because I'm marketing it as the America's first real estate brokerage that's founded, owned, and operated by an openly gay, expressively non-binary female imposter. I am a female imposter as well. Her name is Jasmine Sapphire, and she's very sultry and probably much ruder than I am. So if you encounter, just beware. But she's a delightful performer as well. And I'm also an excellent realtor. So if you're wanting to buy or sell a house or rent your property out, and you want somebody who is like me and authentic and honest, and open.
And that representation helps too, because it helps others to realize that they're not going to be discriminated against.
And that's exactly right. Whether you're a transgender person or a person of color, it doesn't matter. And if you're a Spanish speaking person, I don't speak Spanish, but I have a very good friend that I can put you in contact who absolutely supports everything I am and everything I'm doing. So don't hesitate to reach out in that respect either. So that was my little commercial for the blog, right, or the podcast today. Thank you for tolerating that, Samantha. As we're winding up a little bit, is there anything you want to say before we wind down today?
I would encourage people to look into the SSI Restoration Act, which is being put through Congress right now. It would have to go through budget reconciliation for it to pass, but it would do a lot to help people with disabilities because it would get rid of the restricted income limits that were placed on to maintain our benefits. So a lot of people don't realize that people with disabilities don't have true marriage equality, because if you have to choose between life and love, you're most likely going to choose life if you have to make that choice.
Yes.
If your spouse makes over the poverty limit, you could lose your benefits. And for some people, that is catastrophic. It could be deadly. And it doesn't mean that they're rich. It could just be barely over the poverty line, which means that they still don't have enough.
Yeah, you can't live on that. I mean, come on. The poverty line is exactly that. Poverty. You're not living on poverty wages, so.
Would like to work. We want to be contributing members of society, but we are held back by the system.
And I imagine if you actually go to work, you lose benefits too, right?
You do. You can't earn any income, which means you can't work.
That's ridiculous. I mean, I know you're a talented opera singer. Yes. Wouldn't you want to be able to sing for funds?
Maybe. And I have a degree in psychology and I would like to go further in that, but I don't always see the point if I'm paying for a master's program and paying for a degree that I'll never be able to use unless the system changes.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. And you have to start paying that debt off right after you get out of school, which means you have to
have to work.
Yeah. So it's not fair. And I think there are some people in Congress that are trying to change that, but
And it's the first time hearing about it. So I'm going to spread the word. I'm going to look that up some more and write to my Congress people.
yes,
You all should do, write to your Congress people about things that matter to you. And this matters to me.
thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for being with me today.
It's
I
fun.
probably had many more things to talk about, but we're trying to keep this. I don't even know where we are, but I'm trying to keep them around a half an hour so they don't get into everybody's life completely. It's not a saga.
We can always do a part 2 sometime.
We can. So again, thank you for being here, and I hope you have a fabulous rest of your weekend.
Thank you. I hope you do
And
too.
thank you, and I look forward to seeing you at some of the things we go to together.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be something this week or next week. So
I think so. All right.
all right, take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.